I truly believe is that if you stay consistent, that's going to increase your chances of being successful. Right. You don't have to be the best, but if you're consistent and you're solid at whatever you do, and then you turn it up a little bit with the marketing so people can find you, you're going to have some level of success. You may not be Walmart, Facebook, Amazon, or McDonald's or Starbucks, but you're going to have a base. You're going to have an audience. So listeners, if you're thinking about, the whole point of this episode is if you're thinking about if you are an entrepreneur, I want you to think about these things. I want you to either be nodding your head or taking notes to understand, because this is stuff that isn't always talked about, especially initially on your YouTube videos or social media. This is what they're going to say.
Money on my mind, 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 money on my mind. So money is all I think of. Money on my mind, 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 money on my mind. So money is all I think of.
All right. Money is on my mind indeed. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. I am your gracious host, Darrin Harvey, and this is Financial State of Minds. This is a show where I help you get to that bag, manage that bag, and grow the bag as best as possible as we discuss financial business literacy and anything and everything to do with the power of the dollar. And you're listening to KGPC 96.9 FM, streaming right now on KGPC96.9.org and available on all streaming platforms. And today, I am back here with unofficial co-host of the show, Maurice Shabazz is back in the building. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, Darrin. Always good to be here.
Yeah, so we got this improv, admittedly, episode going, and I wanted to just talk with you as a fellow entrepreneur, and what I want to talk about needs to be talked about a little bit more, which is just the day-to-day challenges of being an entrepreneur, especially a solopreneur. And what I mean by that, listeners, is I want to talk about the differences in mindset between when you're a W-2 employee or even a 1099 contractor compared to when you're an entrepreneur or especially a solopreneur. Now, I felt that you need to be on this episode because, frankly, you've been doing it, literally decades at this point?
Yeah, about 2 decades now.
Yeah, decades. I've been trying business in some capacity now since 2016. This podcast is now a little over 3 years old, but with all my trials, you still got me by double the years. I felt it was very important to get your perspective on this, but I wanted to take this time to chat with you, and it's almost like, for lack of better words, vent.
Right.
Vent a little bit, hoping my venting will be useful to our listeners, especially the listeners who want to be entrepreneurs or the listeners who have 1099 jobs and they have that mindset, that entrepreneur mindset or that spirit. Hopefully I relate to you guys, or you guys are kind of nodding your head as this episode goes on and on and on. So one thing, and we were talking about this off the record, now we're going to bring it on, or not offline, but now we're bringing it online, is the transition of mindset from being a W-2 employee to an entrepreneur. Now, for me, as listeners know, I've worked for about 15 years, not even 10, more so 10 to 15 years-ish. I worked in W-2 corporate America until I fully 100% went down the entrepreneurial life, as in I have no sources of income that are from W-2. All my sources of income at this point, whether I'm getting the income or not, is from entrepreneurship, which is obviously different than a good old stable W-2 check. So what everybody knows about a W-2 check is you go to work, you show up, hopefully you do your job and you do your job correctly. You punch in, you punch out if needed, and you will get a check. You will usually get that check either weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. And you actually know pretty much exactly what you're going to get dollar-wise before you even get it.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is stability. Another thing about W-2 life is when you enter a W-2 job, pretty much any of them, especially the hourly ones, you are told what you need to do, why you need to do it, how you're going to go about doing it, and the tools you need to do it, and you're given those tools, usually without anything coming out of your pocket. And we've been trained for this in society. It's literally called our public school system. You go into school, you do your homework, you do your classwork, you get a grade. That grade is the reason why you're able to move on into the next grade. If you get a better grade, then you get sometimes more rewards. Same thing at work. The better you do at a W-2 job, generally speaking, will lead you to more money, whether that's in a raise or whether that's in a promotion that leads into a higher increase in salary. That is how W-2 works. I'm explaining all of this to basically say in layman's terms, it's very structured, it's very dependable, it's very repeatable. Now, Shabazz, you know this better than me, so I'll let you speak on this part, but solopreneur life or entrepreneur life is not quite like that, right?
No. Short answer. Yeah, no. Not at all.
So I want you to share your experience first. What has that been like for you? What has entrepreneurship for you looked like?
Well, when I started my journey as an entrepreneur, one of the things that I learned early on is that if I don't work, I don't eat, especially when you're like a solopreneur, you mentioned, right? And in that, one of the other things I noticed is that I got to figure out everything. Like, versus being a W-2 employee, it's already laid out for you. You train for a couple weeks, you perform these tasks and these functions, and then you go home at a certain time. And you don't have to really worry about what's going on. In most cases, you don't have to worry about the job until you return the next day or when you return back. When you're an entrepreneur, it's a lot of sleepless nights because, like I said, you got to worry about everything. So things are not figured out for you. You're not just doing one or two or three tasks. You're doing, especially being that you're by yourself in most cases, and a lot of entrepreneurs, they start off by themselves. They don't have a team. You're doing all the sales. You're doing all the networking. You're doing all the investment. You're doing all the work. You're doing all the marketing. You have to take courses for things, and you have to learn things that you don't know, right? So every function and every facet of the business, you pretty much know, or you have to create that system and how that machine is supposed to work. And it's a lot of moving parts, and especially depending on what type of business you're in. And the funny thing is, some people in that, there's levels when it comes to entrepreneurship, right? You got the CEO, and a lot of people don't even understand they're not even CEOs. I mean, on paper, it says, yeah, you're the chief executive officer, but you're really not. In most cases, even though they're entrepreneurs or even though they own a corporation or LLC, a lot of solopreneurs that you mentioned, they pretty much own a job versus actually working for an employer. And there's a big difference. Whereas when you're actually a real CEO, unless you're like Steve Jobs where he wanted to be hands-on with everything, but if you're a CEO, that company is going to run the same every day, whether you're present or not. That's the difference. So, like I said, it's levels. But yeah, just in closing, it's totally different. It's a lot more you have to figure out. It's a lot more you have to do, and you pretty much have to do everything. If you don't do it, it doesn't get done. And that's the difference. You have to be very ambitious. You have to be resilient. You have to have the energy, and you have to have the mindset for it.
Absolutely. And you said a lot, and I want to break down things that you said piece by piece. One of the things you mentioned is that you have to do everything.
Right.
Now, you have to do everything. Let's break that down. Because you said something earlier. Well, if the CEO is there, that doesn't necessarily mean the company stops operating, whether he's there or not. So maybe someone's confused and listening to us and being like, what are you talking about? You need to do everything. You just said it. Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, these big tycoons, these guys, they're envisioning them, on vacation or chilling at the house, and then they have their 1,000+ employees just doing everything and just collecting checks. That's what they're envisioning. Now, my understanding is, while that does happen, that is, one, the overwhelming minority of an entrepreneur, and two, the entrepreneurs who can do that, it's because they were in the trenches for years and years and years and years, and they built their way to that point, especially if they were solo. They started on their own, and then they grew to the point where they could just be hands off. So I want to state that because we see it. We see it on YouTube. We see it on content, like Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And we'll see some of these people. It's like, oh, I'm a CEO and I whatever. It could be CEO of real estate, CEO of a tech company, CEO of whatever. And Gary Vee made this very popular. He would literally just vlog himself talking to the camera. And he's the CEO of 3 companies, all that have hundreds and hundreds of employees. And that gave me the thought of like, oh, well, like maybe these CEOs aren't super ridiculously busy because this guy's literally walking around vlogging every single day. Like literally that's how he kind of built his social media presence, was he would do what was called a daily V. And I follow it. This is back in 2016, 2017. Mm-hmm. Every day this man's walking. He had his own cameraman that he was paying to film himself and just talk about what he does and whatever, and give, the mindset game and all that stuff. What I learned through experience is you can do that when you got to that point. Like you already, your company's revenuing millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. You got a staff of a few dozen to a few hundred people, and that's when you can do that. But even still, he's working technically. He's essentially being a glorified brand ambassador person, marketer still, and stuff like that. But that's what the vision I saw a lot, and that's because that's what we see.
Right.
But what really goes on more commonly is what you mentioned earlier, the sleepless nights, the stress. The big thing you said, which we'll touch on harder later, is creating your own systems or systems that work for your business. Educating yourself, figuring things out. I said that 3 times because that is one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur. That is a different shift from W-2. You mentioned it earlier. I want to harp on it. When you're in W-2, I don't care if you're a CEO, a director, or you're the janitor. You have a role. You have a slice or a role of a big company or of a company. You generally don't have to figure it out. Or even if you do, which we just heard somebody off the record potentially having that opportunity to be able to develop a department, there's still KPIs, there's still goals, there's still metrics, there's still a parameter that they have to work within when creating the department. When you're a solopreneur, when you're an entrepreneur, you're literally creating everything. And a lot of times, it's like you don't even know how to create it because that may not be your specialty. So like me, I come from the world of sales. I don't need no education on a CRM. I don't need no education on the importance of marketing. I don't need any education on how to market myself, how to brand myself, because I was taught that in the world of sales. But I have no idea about accounting up until I self-educated myself. I had no idea. I still have no idea about HR. Thank God I worked with attorneys, so I have some idea about business law. I have some idea about business formations, which is the first thing you need to know because you need to submit your paperwork in order to be a business.
Right.
And as I've said many times, as you know, none of this is taught in public school unless you go to college. And then if you go to college, you have to choose to learn it. Mm-hmm. none of that stuff is taught at all. So you have to figure it out. And a lot of that times that means you have to pay to figure it out, whether it's through a coach, a mentor, or a course or something. You have to pay, and then you have to pray that it's even accurate. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of figuring out. And the stress and I wouldn't even call it stress. It's just I call it strain, because strain is just, it's there. Even though you know how to deal with it, even though you can handle it, there's a strain. Mm-hmm. I'll say this example again, and I'll let you speak on it. My current endeavor right now is a nonprofit, as you know, you're my partner in it, and this podcast. No one taught me how to make a podcast. Mm-hmm. No one taught me. I got the opportunity. I'm very gracious to have our producer assist me with it more than she needs to, and she advises me on what she knows because she has the experience, which, by the way, she doesn't have to do any of that. But other than that, minus maybe a few things I'm missing, that's it. That's all I got. Like, we were just talking about this again offline. If I were to say who's my coworkers are Shabazz and Felicia. Like that's right. It. Like, there's some other people that I see around that are not in my department, but these are my coworkers, and that's it. And I've had to figure out, a lot of things, how to get the podcast on all platforms, how to get the podcast edited, what software to use, how does that software work. I always proudly say that we're recording episode 73, but I edit everything at this point. Felicia was doing it up until, I think, 52, and then I took over to relieve her of that duty. But I'm editing everything, and I'm learning on the fly. I went to school for sociology. I didn't go to school for audio production, right, or social media or business. I self-educated myself on all of it. I'm rambling a lot, but I'm basically saying that's my example on just the podcast aspect of I've had to figure things out. I've had to self-teach myself along the way. And there's a strain. That takes a lot. There's a concern. That can involve sleepless nights. People use that term on social media. Oh, my God, you got to work so hard. 60-hour work weeks, people who do. I tell people that's not always the case. You can work whatever pace you want. But you're going to still have the sleepless nights because you just don't know if what you're doing is correct or not. You don't have that result a lot, which is difference between a W-2, you're being told if you're doing something right or wrong.
Right.
Even if no one's checking your work, you got the framework, so you know what you're doing is right or wrong. I never technically know what I'm doing is right or wrong. The most I have a basis on is Felicia's feedback, maybe your feedback, and if people view the show, and if they even leave a comment. Other than that, I technically don't know how good or bad what the show is. I just have my opinion. So I'll wrap it up there, but literally figuring it all out on your own is a heck of a strain to have as a solopreneur, because at the end of the day, it's me by myself making all these decisions. I have some help, but it's me at the end of the day. That's just the podcast. Shabazz, I know a little bit about your endeavors. Your endeavors are more than just a simple podcast. So you can expand more upon having to figure it out. Talk about some of the things you've had to figure out as in the 20 years you've been an entrepreneur.
It's interesting you ask that because, when I first started, I got into an industry that wasn't saturated at the time. When I got into credit, there wasn't that many credit repair companies. I mean, it was some out there, but now literally you throw a rock in the park and probably hit a credit repair company now, right? Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of referrals. It wasn't too many people doing what I could do at that time. So when I didn't really have to market, of course, social media was still around back then, and I utilized that, and I would just post stuff and really not marketing, but just posting stuff about what I do. And that worked for maybe the first 4 to 5 years. And it was at one point in time, I had 3 locations. I had one in San Francisco, I had one in Stockton, I had one in San Leandro. And I also had another location in San Jose. it did well just based on basically word of mouth and referrals for men. And then what happened is it got saturated. I was doing personal and business credit, business funding, business finance. I always did those things. I had various other ventures. I had a beauty supply. I had a nonprofit, Prodigy, which at the heart of that was the financial education. But it got to a point where the market got saturated and there was a lot more credit repair companies, right? And people that do the same stuff that I do. And, you know, referrals and word of mouth wasn't enough, especially as you grow. You can't depend on just word of mouth and referrals. When you have to pay rent, when you have all these different expenses paid, you have to have, and that was the thing. I was like, how much credit repair, business credit, how much of these services do I have to provide within the course of the month to take care of all my overhead? That was the whole thing. And it dawned on me that I could not depend on just referrals and just word of mouth or people just miraculously just finding me on the internet. So I said, I got to learn how to market. And I thought I knew marketing because I did well, you know, in the beginning. So I started taking some marketing courses. And then I found out I didn't know anything about marketing. Mm. And what was crazy is I took a course, and it's different platforms. You got TikTok wasn't around at the time, but you have Facebook, Instagram, and you have Google, and you have YouTube, right? Mm. Those are pretty much the main platforms. And they're different. Marketing doesn't work the same on one or the other. Even with Facebook and Instagram, even though they're both owned by Facebook or Meta, they're still two totally different platforms, right? So I learned marketing. I learned how to set up ads. What happened was I turned the ad on, and it worked. I got probably about anywhere from 50 to 75 people that first day that was interested in my service. But you know what the problem was? Go back to that solopreneur thing, right? And I had a few virtual assistants and stuff like that, but they weren't as savvy as I wanted them to be. And those 50 to 75 leads that were interested in my service, I can't call 50. I don't have a call center. I can't call 50 to 75 people back. And it dawned on me like, okay, I got the traffic, but where are they supposed to go? Are they just supposed to call? I'm just supposed to answer every call? It can't work like this. And then I realized that I didn't know anything about automation. Because I was like, man, I'm missing something here, you know? So when you get the traffic, you got to be ready for it. So I had to figure out, now I got to learn automation. Like, okay, when I turn on these ads, I need to have a system that they go through to where, you know, I could at least capture maybe 5 to 10% of them at least, right? And convert them, right, to paying customers. So I had to learn marketing. I had to learn automation. So now I have to learn software. And back then, there wasn't AI. Now you could use one software that'll pretty much do just about almost everything, every function for your company. Back then, you had to use maybe about 5 to 10 different softwares, right? And you had to integrate them all together. When I think about it, it was just crazy. Yeah. But being that I knew how to do that at that level, when they started making things easier to where they had these all-in-one systems, I was like, oh, this is much easier because I did it the hard way for years. So I say all that to say that, you know, in being an entrepreneur, you learn things, and the more you learn, the more valuable you are, not to yourself, to your business, but also the people that you serve. And I always tell people, you know, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, whatever money you make, whatever revenue you generate, you should always have a separate fund where you do continuing education. You should always be invested in your continued education because things are always changing, things are always evolving, and you have competitors. Unless you're in a specific business model, you're going to have competitors, right?
Right.
So in order to stay competitive, you have to continue that education.
Yeah, you have to continue to not only develop yourself, but your business, your services, your products, everything to stay ahead, because if not, someone else will. Someone else will, and they could potentially and usually overtake your business. I know you talked about how you essentially got to create a system that worked for you in order for you to handle the new leads that you got. That's what you were talking about earlier. So I want to go a little bit more into systems. That's something, one, that I mentioned earlier, you have to create as an entrepreneur. You're not just handed the system. And the other thing, too, is that when you create the system, you don't know if it's going to work until trial happens.
Right.
Trial can sometimes cost money. In your case, it was the ads. I'm sure you didn't have, those ads were not free, correct?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So you have to have that. And then you said that you were lucky in the sense of you tried it and it worked for you right away. I definitely believe that given the time that you tried it. I'm sure, though, now, in the time that we're on now, that you may not be so lucky because, again, like you mentioned earlier, things have become so competitive and saturated across the board in the industry you're in.
Right.
Unless you're in, like you said, in a niche of a niche, I would say a niche of a niche of a niche, you're going to be competing, and these ads may not be as great because things have just gotten so diluted and stuff like that. So now you have to create a system and see if that system works. And essentially I'm talking about trial and error. And that's another aspect of entrepreneurship that it does get talked about, but I don't think we talk about the kind of psychological effects or just the frustrations of trial and error in general. When you're a W-2 and you're in what we call the training stage, yeah, you have trial and error, but guess what? You get paid for it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like when you're an entrepreneur and you're in trial and error point, that's money that it's the opposite. It's not that you're not getting paid. You're spending the money.
Right.
You're spending the money to figure out if what you're trying even works or not. And a lot of times, too, as solopreneurs, we don't have all the money in the world.
No.
So you generally don't have all the money in the world. It's different if you're just a startup and you've gotten hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding, maybe millions of dollars in funding. Then okay, like that's different. You don't want to waste the money, but at least you have the money. A lot of people, when they start, they're using their own dollars. Most entrepreneurs that I know to this day don't even know about business credit. They don't have business credit. Mm-hmm. So they're taking out personal loans. They're getting funding from family or from parents, whatever. So I feel like there's a sense of urgency that things need to work and something that inherently you need to keep trying to see if it works. Right. So it's this kind of catch-22. So even though I understood all that walking into this space, there's still that strain as well. So there's a strain of dealing with everything by yourself, you being the final decision maker on everything from your product and service to your marketing to HR, everything around it. Then you have to see it work. And then now you're dumping money into marketing and advertising to see if it works. And you're hoping that you can do just these two things, but there's more to talk about. Just these two things, you got to hope it works because you may run out of money before it even hits.
Right.
So those two strains alone, I still won't call them stress, but those two strains alone can really wear down on a person. And again, going back to what you said earlier, sleepless nights. Mm-hmm. You may not even have to work. Like I'm going to tell you guys, podcasting is something where, for me personally, I don't need to be working 16-hour days, 7 days a week for podcasting.
Right.
I don't need to do that. But there's definitely some nights where I'm going to sleep with super anxiety because I'm just like, is this episode going to hit? Is it going to do well? Mm-hmm. I just spent all this time. I done traveled from A to B, spent $100 round trip, Ubering back and forth. Again, I'm grateful to be able to record free of charge, but I'm still spending money. What did I tell you offline? What was the biggest expense in my business?
Transportation.
Right. A legally blind person, that's the biggest expense for me. So I have no problem sharing with the listeners. At the time of this recording, I averaged at least just to record monthly, I spent about at the low end $400 a month. Mm-hmm. My overhead is My overhead for literally everything else was, what I say, between $200 to $300. My traveling is more expensive than everything else that makes up my business. Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate to be in a space where I can afford that. But even though I can afford it, there's that mental of, oh man, I'm dropping $600-700 a month on this podcast every single month. And I've been doing this, we're going on, Felicia, 3 years? 3 years I've been doing this. $600-700 a month every single month. You know, at some point, I don't care if you have the money. You're just like, I need to see a little bit of financial return.
Right.
I need to see a little bit of financial return. And again, we're just talking hundreds of dollars. Mm-hmm. Shabazz, let me ask you, have you been in a situation where it was more than just hundreds of dollars a month?
Oh, man, absolutely. It's been like that for quite some time for me. So, you know, marketing alone, marketing dollars alone, I mean, just to stay competitive it's expensive. And if it wasn't for marketing, I don't even know where my business would be at today, to be honest with you.
Let me ask you a quick question. What do you think is the most important aspect for a business to be successful?
In my experience, I would have to say marketing. And the reason why I say that, I have seen entrepreneurs start a business, didn't even have anything in place, didn't have a system in place, didn't have anything in place, but they were so good at marketing and getting people to come in and spend money that they made enough money to fix all those problems. They just fixed them as they go. They just put things in place as they go. And when you look at everything in a wide spectrum, you know, we'll take McDonald's, for example, right? Does McDonald's really sell the best burger?
No.
But they sell more burgers than any burger company, right?
Right.
It's because of their marketing.
Right.
And that's what we have to understand. A lot of these companies, they're marketing companies. Yeah, they sell burgers and fries, but they're really marketing companies. You look at places like Credit Karma, and people say, oh, well, they just give credit reports for free. No, they don't. Essentially, yeah, it's free for you to sign up, but guess what? Now that they have all the data, now that they have all your information, now that they know what your credit score is and what everything that you actually have reported under your credit, now I can market to you financial products forever. As long as you're in my system, getting that free report every week or whatever, I can market you. I can market all the financial products that I have in my arsenal to you, right? So essentially what they are is a marketing company, right? You take Lexington Law, same thing. They're not the best credit repair company. You go look at the reviews, man, there's a lot of people complaining. But if you go and Google credit repair right now, Lexington Law is going to be the first thing that pops up because they have the marketing dollars. And Google doesn't even like you to market credit repair, but they've been doing it so long and they spend so much money, they done doctored them in, grandfathered them, and they could basically market as much as they possibly want on Google, and they could dominate because they pretty much have been doing it for so long and the amount of ad spend that they spend every month. So really what it comes down to, if you can outmarket a company, you're going to dominate. You might not have the best product. You might not have the best service. You might not have the best process. But for the simple fact that more people know about what you have to offer, that means that more people are going to pay for what you have to offer.
That's game right there. Absolutely. And I need you to say that. Marketing is arguably, in my opinion, too, I agree with you. Marketing is the most important part of being successful in business. It's also, in my opinion, it can be one of the most challenging.
Yeah.
And I won't even say just marketing. Marketing is, of course, it leads to the goal, which is sales. So whether you're selling a product to a client or trying to sell a service to a client, at the end of the day, to me, that has been personally the hardest aspect of any of my businesses that I've ever tried is getting the clients. And what I find, and you nailed it, I'm glad that you shared your story, is that word of mouth, while word of mouth is still and will always be the most powerful form of marketing, it's getting harder and harder for that to sustain a business at all.
Right.
Because there's so many people you're competing with. You know, at the end of the day, I understand that I do have a financial podcast, and there are literal hundreds of financial podcasts. So even if I have the dopest financial podcast possible when it comes to education, I do believe that, listeners, by the way, we do have the dopest. But we have the dopest show. But if no one knows that it exists, then no one knows it's going to exist. And who cares at that point? Right. So I got to spend the time posting it on all the social medias, and you've been helping me with that. But marketing promotion is so important to get the audience or the sales or the clients or whatever what it is for your business so they can just find you. I agree with you. I feel like a lot of businesses fail because they can't be found. Like, you just don't know they exist. You don't know how dope they are.
Right.
And like you said about McDonald's, generally most people don't say it's their favorite burger. But what I noticed is that the branding's consistent. You're seeing them regularly, whether it's TV ads, social media ads. I would say more importantly, you're driving down the street and you always see a McDonald's location. But the consistency. Mm-hmm. And that's what I would say is the second most important thing about being an entrepreneur. I truly believe, and this is what I'm banking on with my hard-earned money and my time, is that if you stay consistent, that's going to increase your chances of being successful. Right. If you're consistent and you're solid, you don't have to be the best. But if you're consistent and you're solid at whatever you do, and then you turn it up a little bit with the marketing so people can find you, you're going to have some level of success. You may not be Walmart, Facebook, Amazon, or McDonald's or Starbucks, but you're going to have a base. You're going to have an audience. Listeners, if you're thinking about, the whole point of this episode is if you're thinking about if you are an entrepreneur, I want you to think about these things. I want you to either be nodding your head or taking notes to understand, because this is stuff that isn't always talked about, especially initially on your YouTube videos or social media. This is what they're going to say. Hey guys, I'm a real estate broker and I have 1,000 units across the nation. And they pull up in their Bugatti or they pull up in their Lambo and they're in front of this big old real estate commercial property. And they're like, you want to learn how to do this? Well, take my course for 80% off right now today. Only today you can get my course and I'll teach you how to get commercial real estate and have 1,000 doors open.
Right.
And then that's it. And you may see 5 to 10 more guys on TikTok, on Instagram, on wherever you choose to be on social media, do a similar version of that. So you get this idea that it's, I don't want to say easy, but that's it. Basically that's it. I just take some courses and I can figure out how I can have a real estate empire. To me, at least when I was consuming that content, especially in the beginning, it oversimplifies and it undersells all the hard work that is required that happens in between those stages. And that's assuming these guys are even telling the truth. Half these guys are not even telling the truth. Half these guys, they made their careers off of selling courses, not doing what they're doing in the courses.
Exactly.
So I definitely wanted to bring that up. One last thing I want to bring up, and before I bring it up, I need to remind the listeners, you're listening to Darrin Harvey, Maurice Shabazz over here at Financial State of Minds on KGPC 96.9 FM. We're talking about challenges related to be a solopreneur. One thing we also talked about is when you're in a relationship with a partner, it doesn't matter if your partner is a woman or a man, you're in a relationship with your partner, and especially if they're not an entrepreneur. They just work W-2 or they work 1099. There can be some challenges there as well. Mm-hmm. So one of my challenges, I would say, I feel, is that my lady, I'm grateful that she's supportive. She's very supportive. But I can tell sometimes she doesn't have the understanding or really I would say the patience. Like, she just doesn't have the patience. Like, wait, you're still working on this 6 months? It's been 6 months. Like, why hasn't anything seemed to move? Why hasn't there seemed to be any progress in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years? You know, for me, it's just 3 years. I can imagine it being 5 years, 10 years. Why is there no profit? Why is there no money coming in? Why are you still doing 12, 16-hour work days and you're literally losing money month after month after month after month? Maybe you shouldn't do this anymore. Maybe you need to go get a job. Not to say that my lady has said those final things, but that is definitely a very conversation I hear amongst entrepreneurs all the time, especially if you're a man, but women too. Women probably get more pressure because they're supposed to be at home taking care of kids. But Shabazz, you know, what have you heard, whether it's your own experience or the experience of others, when it comes to one person being a solopreneur and then the other person being a W-2? What are some of the challenges that you've heard or seen?
Well, being an entrepreneur versus being a W-2 employee, of course, a lot of people, I hear this a lot from W-2 employees, like they be like, yeah, my hat goes off to you, but I just got to get a paycheck. At least I know I'm guaranteed to get paid if I show up and perform this function. And I think for a lot of people, that's really simple. After I leave, I can pretty much continue on with my day, my evening, or whatever, and I don't have to really worry about it until I return. And with entrepreneurs, they don't want the ceiling in most cases. I'm guaranteed a check every 2 weeks or a monthly salary, but how long am I going to be able to accept the same pay? Because usually, generally, in most cases, raises are only maybe $1 or $2.
Yeah, it's like barely inflation, basically, like 3 to 5%.
So it's like, and you have to pretty much bust your butt, or you don't get that until some don't even get it once a year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now it's in corporate America, you could be qualified, you can have performed at the highest, and just because they like another person or favor another person more, they'll give them the position. They'll give them the higher position, the higher pay. And so it's not, the whole system is not fair, of course, right?
Right.
It's not equal. So, and that's why most people usually want to go in. That's one of the most reasons I hear where people want to go in and be in entrepreneurship. I want to be able to make as much money as I possibly can according to my ability, right? You know, I don't have to worry about nobody giving me a raise. I don't have to worry about getting paid, you know, every 2 weeks or once a month on that certain date. I could get paid every day, right? And as long as I'm good at what I do and as long as I progress and I'm competitive, I will be successful, right? And to be honest with you, yeah, it is true. I've been in relationships with women where I see how much money they make and I look at their paycheck and I'm like, I made more than that with one client, right? And not necessarily putting W-2. Look, there's nothing wrong with working a job. I want to just make that clear. Let's get that established.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with working a job. There's nothing wrong with being a W-2 employee because entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Some people, I just know they would not make it as an entrepreneur just because of how they're wired and other variables as well. But if you actually do, if you got the guts for it and you have the ambition, it's definitely, I would pick it over anything. I just knew early on, even though I've worked jobs, I definitely worked jobs, but I just knew ultimately that being a W-2 employee just wasn't for me. And I didn't like a lot of things about it. And don't get me wrong, I know people talk about job security and stuff like that, and people feel more secure with it. I can see why. And don't get me wrong, even as an entrepreneur, it's been times I pretty much envy W-2 employees. Cause I'm like, y'all seem like y'all ain't got a care in the world. Y'all go work y'all job and then y'all go to happy hour and y'all not, you don't have all the worries of an entrepreneur, right? So that simplified way of living, I kind of like at times I'd be like, yeah, I wouldn't mind that either, especially when things get rough as an entrepreneur and the pressure is on. So definitely understand it and I get it, but I think that right now, even more so in the place that we are in this country, and even I even go back to the recession in 2007, we should all know, at least most of us should know, that there really isn't no job security.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the biggest giant go down instantly. GM, it pretty much bankrupted the whole city of Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
All the pensions, the retirement that those people had, it was gone just in the snap of a finger. Can you imagine that? So people probably worked at, they say, hey man, I got job security at GM. It's a strong company. It's a big corporation. They've been around for all these years. They'll never go down, but they did. And there was other big giants that went down as well. Now you're looking at job security, and then you're looking at inflation. As a W-2 employee, the rate of pay cannot keep up with the amount of inflation. It can't even keep up with the rate of taxes either. Taxes always go up. They never go down. They just keep going up over time. So when inflation goes up, when taxes goes up, right, your pay is not going up with that. That's why people are feeling such a crunch now, because these things are so imbalanced. That's why more people are looking to other alternatives, side hustles, to bring in more income. So I just say all that just to simply say that, yeah, being an entrepreneur is a lot, but bringing in some extra income is not a bad idea, especially in this economy.
Absolutely. Ooh, job security, that's one that I can go on and on about, but we're down to like the last 8 minutes. So I do want to comment, though, you're absolutely right. Job security is a falsehood. You're talking about 2007. We don't need to go back that far. We need to go back to, oh, wait, there's a government shutdown at the time it's recording. We're on day, I believe. Are we hit 30-day mark? I believe we've hit 30 days or close to it.
Yeah.
Federally funded roles. Job security.
Exactly.
Tech, which was huge, still is huge, but has been huge, especially out here in the San Francisco Bay Area. For the last 10 years, it's just been growing. Right. And then COVID hit. What happened? It really grew during COVID. Mm-hmm. That was the one field that was just like, let's just hire them and grow. You can work remote. We'll let you, man. Come on through. Mm-hmm. And then we've just seen it now consistently in the last 2 or 3 years. Just waves and waves of layoffs in tech.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
In tech. And then right now, of course, we got the AI taking all the entry-level jobs, or taking a lot of entry-level jobs. So job security is seriously being tested. That theory is being tested right now in 2025. And that's why I generally in this show, we push entrepreneurship. But I've also said in this show, if some job were to understand my disability, understand my situation, and give me a big enough check, this is a hobby now. I'm about to take that check and go and da-da-da-da-da and stuff like that. So I always make that clear that everyone's reason for entrepreneurship is different. It's not always just because you want an unlimited amount of money. It's not always just because you want to have full control or you want to have full creativity or whatever. Everyone has their own reasons of being an entrepreneur, but at the end of the day, we're all in this special community. And we need support, especially solopreneurs. We need support, especially people who are just starting. We need that support. So I want to make sure that people understand, and again, they're taking notes if they're considering it, or if they are an entrepreneur and they're just getting started, or maybe they already have some success. They're nodding their heads right now like, yeah, Darrin, you're speaking real game right now. Or Shabazz, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is stuff that, needs to continue to be talked about. Especially because social media ain't doing it. They are straight up like, take this course and you can own this. Do this simple things and have a little bit of work. You can do all that. Like, they're not saying it, but that's how it's portrayed because that's just social media and YouTube and stuff like that. And a lot of people are getting caught up, and especially have concerns of the younger generations because they have their own things going on with the world and how they're consuming things. But yeah, guys, as I wrap up this episode, I want people to really think about this if you're considering entrepreneurship. So, Shabazz, we got a few minutes left. If you have one thing or a couple of things you would tell people before or during their early stages of entrepreneurship, you can tell them anything. What would you tell them?
You know, everybody, usually most people have at least one thing that they're really good at. Figure out what that one thing that you are really good at and that you also enjoy doing or you're passionate about. And do that one thing. I mean, you could do it from the comfort of your own home. Start small, you know, until you outgrow your kitchen table. Then you might need a business space or whatnot. But whatever it is that you're good at and you're passionate about, figure out how you could bring that to the market and solve a problem. And that's what I always tell people, you know, whatever it is that you do best, if you could solve a problem, bring a solution to the table or make something easier, bring that to the table and put it out there. Because I know everybody could use some extra income, right? And just go ahead and test it out. Do it part-time and see how it works for you. You might have the next $1 million idea. You never know. I see it all the time. People started it right in their garage, and now they're a multi-million-dollar company. So don't limit yourself is all I'm saying. You're always supposed to be trying to elevate in every facet of life, especially when it comes to finance.
Absolutely. And we'll end it right there, right on time. So thanks, Shabazz, as always, being on and doing these episodes with me. I appreciate you, brother. And we'll go ahead and wrap this up. This has been Darrin Harvey. This is Financial State of Mind, KGPC 96.9 FM. This is the show where we help you get to that bag, manage that bag, and grow that bag as best as possible as we discuss financial and business literacy, everything to do with the power of the dollar. Peace, kings, and queens. We are out of here.